20 years ago, about this time, I was graduating from high school myself. I remember the little calculator that I would use for my maths exams, little clear plastic envelope that I'd have with the things I could bring in for maths and science exams. I also remember my school formals coming up. I was kind of nervous about that. In fact, I was so shy I didn't even invite someone to my formal, so I went alone. I was a bachelor at the formal. But I also was wondering what my future was going to be about. What kind of career I was going to have, what kind of difference I was going to make in the world. In the 2 decades since I graduated from high school, I've experienced war as a soldier on the front lines in the Middle East. I've experienced social change in the front lines of a slum in Africa where I was leading a high school for street kids. I've experienced the realities of health in my lifetime by having malaria 5 times while I was doing some of this work in Africa. I've written about the impacts of climate change as a student at Cambridge University, and then I've seen them happen all around the world. But for all of that, and the things that I've seen since I graduated, I'm more optimistic than ever about where we're heading as a planet and as a society. And the reason for my optimism is you. I think that this next generation is going to be the most powerful generation of change makers the world has ever seen. And I've been at the forefront of that for the last 2 decades, and so have a lot of my friends. We've launched non-profits, we've invented things, we've come up with things to make the world better. So why do I think that you're the most powerful generation that the world has ever seen? Why do I think you will make the most impact of any generation that's come before you? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons for this. The first is you're impatient. You want things to happen quickly. When I was growing up, MTV, where we'd watch music videos, they said that videos should be 3 minutes long. Your generation came along and said, well, Snapchat should be 7 seconds long. So you're so impatient with the way that you use social media, but you're also impatient with the difference that you want to make in the world as well. When I see your generation, I see a huge amount of change makers doing incredible things, and I think of many, many people around the world doing things. But I also think of this girl. Greta is someone who you know. She said to the world leaders, because you're behaving like children, we'll step up and actually do things ourselves. I think that she has done more for environmental justice in the last 3 or 4 years than a generation of environmental activists before her. And she's your age. And this is not just someone across the other side of the world who's doing this. This is something we're seeing right on our doorstep here in Sydney. I don't know if any of you were involved in these protests, but it was one of the world's largest movements that we saw. So your generation is at the forefront of this. You're tired of waiting for summits and conferences and people talking about change. And you're saying we need the change now, as fast as possible, and we're willing to do something about it. The second reason why I think your generation will be the most powerful change makers the world has ever seen is because you see things wrong in the world and then you do things about them. Rather than just scrolling through content, say on social media, you're building content. Rather than seeing businesses and buying from them, you're building businesses yourselves. But when we look at social justice, there's so many inspiring examples all around the world of young people your age making change. When I think of the United States, where my wife is from and where my son is a US citizen and I spend a lot of time, I think of the tragic shooting at the Parkland School just a few years ago. And a group of students who were engaged in that tragic day stood up and said, we're going to do something about this, and launched one of the largest protests the world has ever seen, the Parkland students. They probably did more for gun control in America than the last 2 decades of social activists before them. And they're your age. The third reason why I think you're going to be the best generation of change makers we've ever seen is because you'll have more technology at your fingertips than we ever had. In fact, in your smartphone now, there's more technology than all of NASA had to get people to the moon in the 1960s. In your smartphone. And the reason why technology is getting so powerful in the years ahead, it was actually predicted in the 1950s by a guy called Gordon Moore. This is what Gordon looks like. He invented a little company called Intel. In fact, there's an Intel chip in this laptop. And he said, we think we can get twice as powerful outputs from our computers every 18 months. We'll get twice as effective every 18 months. And he's been pretty much right since the 1950s. What that means is technology is getting so powerful as we move through. If you think of the first transistor, this thing had about 1,200 bits in it. If they've doubled every single 18 months since the 1950s when they first put this thing out, this is what it looks like now. It's in a laptop. That's what it looks like when you actually look into the chip. But it's got close to 1 billion transistors running through it now. We're not really good at understanding what exponential growth looks like. If we're going to be twice as powerful with technology in 18 months' time, we're not really great at figuring out how much of a difference that's going to make in the world. But if you think of all of human history, from when we first learned to walk and use tools in our hands to now, this is where we've come so far in human history, and this is what will happen in your lifetime. There'll be more technology, more artificial intelligence, more robotics. We'll solve more diseases. We'll be able to tackle climate change because of the technology that you have at your fingertips. So, what have I learned in the last 20 years since I graduated from high school? I've learned that science and technology is the biggest lever for change. I launched a nonprofit 10 years ago with a group of friends called YGAP. If you think of Shark Tank or Dragon's Den, if you've seen that on TV, we do that, but we do it for entrepreneurs in some of the poorest places in the world. We find female inventors, for example, with our Why Her program, who have invented an ultrasound machine that they can plug into a smartphone. They can go into a refugee camp and scan 100 pregnant women in one day. I've seen people taking on solar energy, and they're doing incredible things when they can use science and entrepreneurship and their ability to speak and market their ideas. There's huge impacts that get made. So I think you can use these tools to great effect. And when I say technology, I don't mean just writing lines of code. I mean being smart with social media. I mean creating powerful video that moves people's hearts. All sorts of things we can use when we're looking at technology. The second thing is we need all sorts of people in science and technology. I am not a coder. I do not write lines of code for websites. But I know nowadays that I can jump onto a website at lunchtime and build a website with one of you. We can do that so quickly now because of the tools we have at our disposal. We're going to need people who have ethics degrees to be teaching artificial intelligence the ethics it should be using. We need people with English degrees to be writing the marketing programs or the training programs so people can understand technology. We need engineers to understand how this works and physically build some of the robots we're looking at. We need so many different people working in the fields of technology. And I would encourage you that if you're finding grade 10 physics hard, don't think, well, I'm out. No technology career for me. I think what we're looking for is problem solvers in technology. We're looking for people who can adapt quickly. We expect that in your lifetimes, you'll have 17 different jobs across at least 5 different industries. So you might work in artificial intelligence for the first 10 years of your career, and then you might be an inventor, then you might be an entrepreneur, then you might work in fashion, who knows. So this is what we're going to see with your generation. It's very, very interesting. For the first time in human history, you'll be adapting very, very quickly. The third thing I want to share with you today is See It, Be It. This is the program that we're launching at Microsoft for next year. We believe that there's a huge power when you see people working in STEM and then you think, I could do that. So throughout the program, you're going to actually see examples of powerful technology, and then we're going to teach you the actual practical skills to do that, and then you're going to dream up your own concepts. So we want to see how innovative you are based on what we teach you. There's incredible prizes up for grabs, and we can't wait to see what you come up with. Some of the things that we'll be doing through the program is a whole range of things. We'll be teaching you how to use mechatronics, so robotics. We'll teach you how to build a robotic hand, for example. Once we teach you actually how you build a robotic hand, we want to know, now that you know that technology, what would you do if you could invent something in the future yourself? We'll also teach you how to build music videos and use Adobe After Effects to get a message across, to get people engaged with music, with storytelling. We'll also teach you how to build items that can be used by astronauts. So this is not just a lecture. This is not we're going to present to you for an hour. You will be building these things yourself if you choose to be involved in See It, Be It. So I'd encourage you, when your teacher talks about See It, Be It next year, get involved. They're practical lessons, and we're really interested to see what you come up with. So what I want you to do now is, in your pencil case there, that grey bag that you have, are these postcards. I remember when I was your age, the most annoying question I would get asked was, Aaron, what do you want to do in your future? And it would usually be a nice auntie at a Christmas lunch who would say that, Aaron, what are you doing in your future? And my response was often, well, what are you doing in yours? Because I didn't know yet, and she probably didn't know yet either. I think that there's a better way to ask this question. And that is, what's the future going to look like? And what contribution will you make to it? So I've got an example here. Hey, 2020 Aaron. Well, it's finally happened. Every child in the world is now going to school. All those years ago when you started this work, there were 300 million kids who were not going to school. But we got there. And every kid in the world is getting a great education now. AI was a big game changer, and most kids in the world are using their own device and using AI now as well. We still need teachers. They're really important. Oh, by the way, one of the students from the See It, Be It program has just won a Nobel Prize. We're going to the hologram presentation of the award next week. Keep the faith, Aaron. 19th of November 2040. So what I want you to do just the next few minutes is I want you to write a postcard to your 2020 self from your 2040 self. What are you seeing in 2040? How is the world different? How is it better? What change has been made? And how are you at the front lines of that change? This is just for you. This is not an exam. You don't have to read this out. I want you to write a postcard from your 2040 self to your 2020 self, explaining how the future is different, what changed, and the contribution that you made on the front lines of that change. Enjoy. Just spend a couple of minutes reflecting and doing that.